in the heart of a quiet Texas town. A retired war hero seeks peace. But when an outlaw biker gang threatens his newfound serenity, past battles resurface. Can one man's courage protect his community from the shadows of his history? Drop a comment and share where you're joining us from. If stories like this resonate with you, hit subscribe so you don't miss our next inspiring journey coming tomorrow. The first light of dawn filtered through the large windows of O'Connor's Café, casting a warm glow over the rustic wooden tables and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee that permeated the air. Captain Michael Mick O'Connor moved behind the counter with practiced ease, his hands deftly preparing each cup with the precision honed during his years in the military. The café, nestled in the heart of a small Texas town, was more than just a place to grab a morning brew, it was the community's heartbeat. Mick greeted each regular with a genuine smile, his grizzled appearance softened by the kindness in his eyes. Mrs. Jenkins arrived first, her silver hair neatly pinned back as she settled into her favorite corner seat. "Morning, Mick," she called out, her voice carrying a hint of gratitude. "Good morning, Mrs. Jenkins," Mick replied, sliding a steaming cup of black coffee across the counter. "The usual?" "As always," she nodded, taking a sip and sighing contentedly. "This place brings me back to better times." Meanwhile, Lena O'Connor, Mick's wife, busied herself with arranging pastries in the display case. Her presence added a sense of calm to the bustling cafe, her gentle demeanor balancing Mick's stoic exterior. They shared a quiet understanding, a bond forged through years of shared hardship and unwavering support. As the morning unfolded, the cafe filled with the town's residents, farmers discussing the latest yields, teenagers nervously preparing for their first day of high school, and elderly men reminiscing about days gone by. Mick listened to snippets of conversations, his mind occasionally drifting to memories of the past. Yet he maintained his focus on the present, determined to provide a sanctuary for those around him. A flickering television in the corner displayed the local news. The anchor's voice broke through the chatter, announcing, "In other news, authorities are increasing patrols in the area following reports of increased biker gang activities nearby." The words hung in the air, unnoticed by most but sending a ripple of unease through Mick. Lena glanced at the screen, her brow furrowing slightly. "More bikers in town," she whispered, worry evident in her tone. Mick nodded, his jaw tightening. "Yeah. Hopefully. It's nothing we have to worry about." The day progressed with the usual rhythm, but the underlying tension was palpable. Mick couldn't shake the feeling that their peaceful existence was teetering on the brink of disruption. He exchanged a meaningful glance with Lena, both silently acknowledging the potential threat without uttering a word. As noon approached, the cafe took on a livelier atmosphere. The door swung open, admitting Officer Tom Davis, a friendly face known to all in the community. "Hey, Mick," he greeted, taking a seat at the counter. "Everything quiet today?" "Pretty much," Mick replied, pouring Tom a cup of coffee. "Just the usual." Tom sipped his drink thoughtfully. "You heard about the bikers, right?" "Heard they're getting bolder." Mick nodded again, his mind racing with the implications. "Yeah. I saw it on the news. We'll keep an eye out." Tom offered a reassuring smile. "Good to hear. Let us know if you need anything." As Tom left, Mick turned his attention back to his duties. Yet his thoughts remained preoccupied. The memories of Vietnam War, the chaos, the loss, the camaraderie flickered at the edges of his consciousness. He drew strength from those experiences, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, he had the resilience to face them. The afternoon waned, and the cafe began to empty. Mick and Lena stood side by side, cleaning up after another day of service. The town was peaceful, but the shadow of potential conflict lingered. They shared a silent promise to protect their sanctuary, whatever it might take. As the last customer left, Mick glanced out the window once more. The sun was setting, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink. For now, the town remained calm. But Mick knew better than to let his guard down. The dawn had brought its peace, but he was ready for whatever darkness might follow. Another day survived. Lena whispered, her hand finding Mick's. Yes, he replied softly. And we'll keep surviving. Together. With that, they locked up the cafe, stepping into the cool evening air with a renewed sense of purpose. The quiet town of Texas slept peacefully, unaware of the storm that was slowly gathering on the horizon. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the quiet Texas town, Captain Michael Mick O'Connor closed up O'Connor's Café for the night. The cafe had returned to its usual calm after the bustling afternoon. But Mick couldn't shake the lingering unease from the day's news about increasing biker activities nearby. He glanced around the empty space, ensuring everything was in order before stepping outside. In the dimming light, the sound of roaring engines echoed through the streets. Mick watched as a group of motorcycles revved their engines at the end of the main road, their chrome gleaming under the fading sunlight. Among them was Eddie Reaper Dawson, the imposing leader of the outlaw biker gang known as the Riders of Vengeance. Eddie's presence was commanding, his eyes scanning the town with a mix of determination and menace. Later that evening, Eddie gathered his crew in a secluded area behind a local bar. The air was thick with tension as they discussed their plans. We need a new base of operations, Eddie declared, his voice firm. This town's small, but it's strategic. Mick O'Connor's Café is the perfect spot, central, inconspicuous. And he's a former soldier. We can use his skills to our advantage. One of the bikers, Jake Bullet Harris, nodded in agreement. He's got the discipline and the know-how from his days in Vietnam War. We could train our guys better here, control the town more effectively. Eddie paced in front of his gang, his mind focused on their objective. We establish dominance here. Start with Mick's Café, let him know who's in charge. No one crosses us and gets away with it. Meanwhile, back in town, the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. Word of the Riders of Vengeance began to spread, causing unease among the residents. Farmers and shop owners received veiled threats, warning them not to interfere or oppose the gang. Mrs. Jenkins overheard a conversation between two elderly men at the cafe. Have you heard? Those bikers are making their move. They're not playing around anymore. The fear was palpable as the town grappled with the reality of the gang's intentions. People whispered about Mick's resolve, wondering if his military background would be enough to fend off the looming threat. Lena noticed Mick's furrowed brow one evening as they sat together after closing. You look worried, she said softly. Mick sighed, leaning back in his chair. I just hope we can handle whatever they're planning. I don't want our peace to be shattered. Days passed, and the Riders of Vengeance continued their intimidation tactics, disrupting local businesses and spreading fear. The town's once serene streets now felt on edge, everyone waiting for the inevitable confrontation. Mick remained vigilant, his thoughts constantly drifting between the present threats and the memories of battle he had tried so hard to leave behind. One chilly night, the tension reached its peak. The sound of revving engines shattered the silence as Eddie and his gang approached Mick's Café once more. This time, their intent was clear. They stormed into the cafe, motorcycles smashing through the front windows, glass scattering across the floor. Eddie stepped forward, his gaze locking onto Mick. "You've been a thorn in our side for too long, O'Connor. It's time you and your cafe become part of the Riders of Vengeance." Mick stood his ground, his military training evident in his calm yet resolute demeanor. "This is my home, Eddie. I won't let you take it." The room erupted into chaos as the bikers attempted to seize control. Mick moved swiftly, blocking their advances and using his environment to his advantage. The skills he had honed in Vietnam War came to the forefront, allowing him to counter their aggression with precision and strategy. Amidst the struggle, Mick caught a glimpse of Eddie's conflicted expression, hinting at a deeper story behind the ruthless exterior. As the battle intensified, Mick realized that this confrontation was not just about defending his cafe but also about facing the ghosts of his past. As the night wore on, the clash between Mick and the Riders of Vengeance left the cafe in ruins. But Mick emerged victorious, albeit battered. The bikers retreated, leaving behind a town that now fully understood the true strength and resilience of their local veteran. Under the pale moonlight, Mick surveyed the damage, his mind racing with thoughts of what lay ahead. He knew this was only the beginning, and the storm was far from over. But with each challenge, Mick grew more determined to protect his community and find peace amidst the chaos. The following morning dawned clear and bright, offering a stark contrast to the turmoil that had unsettled Mick O'Connor the night before. As he reopened O'Connor's cafe, Mick felt the weight of last night's confrontation pressing on him. The remnants of shattered glass from the biker attack lay scattered across the floor, a painful reminder of the fragility of his peaceful existence. Mick moved through his morning routine with a heightened sense of vigilance. Every creak of the wooden floor and every unfamiliar face passing by the window triggered a flicker of anxiety. He exchanged brief, concerned looks with Lena, who sensed his unease without needing words. Their bond, forged through shared struggles, provided a silent support that Mick leaned on heavily. As customers began to trickle in, Mick's thoughts drifted back to his time in Vietnam War. The disciplined movements he executed while serving coffee mirrored the tactical maneuvers he had performed in the dense jungles and chaotic battlefields. Each action was a subconscious echo of his past, a way to keep his instincts sharp and his mind focused. A knock on the door interrupted his reverie. Tom Hawk Henderson, another local veteran and a regular at the cafe, stepped inside. Hawk was a former Marine who had also served in Vietnam, though in a different capacity than Mick. His presence brought a sense of camaraderie that Mick found comforting. "Morning, Mick," Hawk greeted, his voice steady but eyes reflecting a shared history of hardship. "Morning, Hawk," Mick replied, forcing a smile. "What brings you here today?" Hawk glanced around, his expression turning serious. "I heard what happened last night. Those bikers aren't just troublemakers, they're organized. We need to be prepared." Mick nodded, feeling the familiar surge of responsibility. "I'm already taking steps to secure the cafe, but any help you can offer would be appreciated." Hawk took a seat, pulling out a worn map of the town. "We've got a few other vets who can assist. We need to set up patrols and reinforce our defenses. It's the only way to keep them at bay." As they discussed strategies, Mick felt a renewed sense of purpose. The skills and leadership he had developed during the Battle of Vietnam War were being called upon once again. Not on a distant battlefield, but in the defense of his community. The parallels between his past and present were undeniable, and Mick found solace in the fact that he wasn't alone in this fight. Later that afternoon, Linda Eagle Martinez arrived at the cafe, a former Air Force intelligence officer. Linda had a sharp mind and a knack for strategic planning. Her expertise was invaluable in anticipating the bikers' moves and devising effective countermeasures. "Good to see you, Linda," Mick greeted her warmly. "We could use your insight on reinforcing our security." Linda nodded, her eyes scanning the cafe layout. "We need to create choke points and clear escape routes. If they try to take over, we can control the flow and minimize chaos. It's similar to securing a perimeter in a hostile environment." As the afternoon sun cast long shadows through the windows, the group of veterans worked together, their collective experiences creating a robust defense plan. Mick felt a deep sense of pride and gratitude for these men and women who had once fought alongside him in Vietnam and now stood with him to protect their peaceful lives. That evening, Mick sat alone in his office, reviewing the plans they had developed. The memories of Vietnam War surged back with vivid clarity, the camaraderie, the fear, the relentless fight for survival. He closed his eyes, taking a deep breath to center himself. These echoes of the past were not just haunting him, they were empowering him. Mick realized that his strength lay not only in his training but also in the bonds he had formed with his fellow veterans. Together, they could harness their shared resilience to face the challenges ahead. The storm was indeed approaching, but with his community by his side, Mick felt more prepared than ever to weather it. As night fell, the veterans dispersed, each carrying a piece of Mick's unwavering resolve. The cafe, though scarred, stood as a symbol of their unity and determination. Mick looked out the window one last time, the horizon darkening with the promise of impending conflict. Yet, within him burned the steadfast spirit of a warrior, ready to defend his peace and honor the memories of those who had fallen alongside him in Vietnam War. The morning sun cast a golden hue over O'Connor's cafe, but the peace was deceptive. Inside, Captain Michael Mick O'Connor sat alone at a corner table, his fingers tracing the rim of his coffee mug absent-mindedly. The events of the previous night replayed in his mind. Eddie Reaper Dawson and his riders of vengeance had come with a vengeance, leaving scars both physical and emotional. Mick's breaths were shallow, a silent testament to the lingering anxiety that gripped him. Lena entered the cafe, her presence a soothing balm to Mick's frayed nerves. She approached quietly, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "You okay, Mick?" He looked up, forcing a smile. "Just thinking about last night. I can't shake the feeling that this is only the beginning." Lena nodded, her eyes filled with concern. "We need to stay strong. Maybe it's time to reach out for help." Mick sighed, the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. "You're right. I can't handle this alone." That evening, Mick gathered a group of fellow veterans in his living room. The room buzzed with a mix of determination and apprehension as Hawk Henderson, a former Marine, and Linda Martinez, an ex-Air Force intelligence officer, joined him. Each member brought unique skills honed from their military backgrounds. "We've faced tough situations before," Mick began, his voice steady. "Now, we need to protect our community from these bikers. We have the experience and the skills to defend ourselves." Hawk leaned forward, mapping out the cafe's perimeter. "We can set up patrols and secure entry points. I can handle the perimeter defenses, just like we did in Vietnam." Linda nodded, her strategic mind already at work. "I'll coordinate communications and gather intel on their movements. We need to stay one step ahead." As they discussed strategies, Mick felt a surge of hope. The camaraderie and shared purpose among the veterans mirrored the unity they had shown on the battlefield. Together, they began fortifying the cafe, installing makeshift barriers and hidden weapon caches. Mick moved with a calm efficiency, his military training seamlessly translating into civilian defense tactics. Later that night, Mick found himself alone in the cafe's back room. Exhaustion etched on his face. He sat down, closing his eyes as memories of Vietnam War flooded his mind. The sounds of gunfire, the chaos of battle, and the loss of comrades haunted him. His heart pounded as he relived the intense emotions, the fear, and the unwavering resolve to survive. A soft knock on the door interrupted his reverie. It was Lena, holding 2 cups of tea. "Thought you might need this." He accepted the cup, gratitude evident in his eyes. "Thanks, Lena. It's been a tough day." She sat beside him, squeezing his hand gently. "You're doing what needs to be done, Mick. Don't forget that." Mick nodded, taking a sip of the soothing tea. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm cut out for this. The same instincts that saved us on the battlefield are now fighting for something else." Lena leaned her head on his shoulder. "You're more than capable. And you're not alone. We have each other." Mick took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his PTSD slowly lift as he drew strength from Lena's unwavering support. "You're right. We can do this together." The following days were a whirlwind of preparation. The veterans took turns patrolling the cafe and its surroundings, their presence a deterrent to any further aggression from the bikers. Mick found solace in the structured routine, channeling his past experiences into effective defense strategies. The bonds between the veterans grew stronger, each one contributing their expertise to the collective effort. One evening, as Mick and Hawk stood guard outside the cafe, the distant sound of motorcycles echoed through the night. The tension was thick, but Mick felt a newfound sense of purpose. He glanced at Hawk, who gave a reassuring nod. "We're ready," Mick said, his voice firm. As the bikers approached, Mick felt the familiar rush of adrenaline. This time, however, he was not alone. The veterans stood beside him, a united front against the impending threat. The battle within had been fought and won, not on a distant battlefield, but within the hearts and minds of those who had served. With the community's support and his fellow veterans by his side, Mick knew they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The echoes of Vietnam War had shaped him, but it was his resilience and the strength of his newfound family that would carry him through the storm. The sun had long set, and darkness enveloped the small Texas town. O'Connor's Café stood fortified, its windows barricaded and makeshift barriers erected outside. Inside, Captain Michael Mick O'Connor and his team of veterans, Hawk Henderson and Linda Martinez, prepared for the inevitable confrontation. The air was thick with anticipation and the faint scent of coffee, now overshadowed by the tension of what was to come. Mick paced the back room, his mind sharp and focused. The training from Vietnam War had prepared him for chaos, and tonight was no different. He glanced at his fellow veterans, each of them embodying resilience and determination. Their camaraderie mirrored the bond he had forged on the battlefield, now redirected to protect their peaceful lives. A distant roar of engines pierced the night, signaling the arrival of the Riders of Vengeance. Eddie Reaper Dawson led his gang, their motorcycles gleaming under the moonlight. The bikers dismounted, their presence imposing and menacing as they approached the cafe with aggressive intent. Eddie stepped forward, his eyes locking onto Mick's with a mixture of contempt and determination. "This ends now, O'Connor. Hand over the cafe, or face the consequences." Mick stood his ground, his voice steady. "I won't let you take what's mine. This is my home, and I'll defend it with everything I have." Without warning, the bikers launched their attack. The room erupted into chaos as fists flew and makeshift weapons clashed. Mick moved with calculated precision, using his military training to counter each move with strategic efficiency. Hawk and Linda fought alongside him, their actions synchronized like a well-oiled machine, reminiscent of their coordinated maneuvers in Vietnam War. Amid the fray, a member of the biker gang swung a heavy pipe at Mick, who deftly blocked the strike and retaliated with a swift counterattack. The sound of metal against metal echoed through the cafe, blending with the shouts and grunts of combatants. Every movement Mick made was a testament to his survival instincts, honed through countless battles. As the battle intensified, Mick noticed Jake Bullet Harris targeting one of the veterans. Without hesitation, Mick intervened, taking a hit meant for his comrade. Blood stained his uniform, but his resolve remained unbroken. "Jake, stop. This doesn't have to end in violence." Jake paused, his expression conflicted as he saw the determination in Mick's eyes. "You think you can change me, Mick? We both know what this is about." Before Mick could respond, a loud crash diverted everyone's attention. One of the bikers had knocked over a shelf, causing heavy glass to spill across the floor. In the chaos, Hawk Henderson was struck by a stray metal beam, falling to the ground with a grievous injury. The room fell silent for a moment, the gravity of the situation sinking in, fueled by a surge of anger and sorrow. Mick rallied his team. "We need to finish this. For Hawk and for our community." With renewed vigor, the veterans launched a coordinated assault, pushing the bikers back with unwavering strength. Mick faced Eddie once more, their eyes locked in a final showdown. "It's over. Eddie. Leave now, and you won't have to face me again." Eddie, battered and bruised, saw the unwavering resolve in Mick's stance. He nodded reluctantly, signaling his gang to retreat. "This isn't the end, O'Connor. We'll be back." As the bikers fled, the veterans tended to their wounds, their breaths heavy but victorious. The cafe, though damaged, stood as a symbol of their resilience and unity. Mick knelt beside Hawk, who was barely conscious. "We did it. Hawk. You saved us all," Mick whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Hawk managed a weak smile. "We all did. Together." The police arrived shortly after, securing the area and apprehending the remaining bikers. The town breathed a collective sigh of relief, their faith in Mick and his group reaffirmed. As dawn broke, the first light of day revealed the aftermath of the night's battle: broken furniture, shattered glass, but also a community united and stronger than before. Mick stood outside the cafe, looking out over the town he had vowed to protect. The echoes of Vietnam War still resonated within him. But tonight, he had harnessed those memories to defend what mattered most. Lena approached, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You did it, Mick. You kept us safe." He nodded, feeling the weight of leadership and the bonds of camaraderie solidify his purpose. "We did it together, and we'll keep doing it, no matter what comes our way." As the sun rose, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, Mick knew that while the storm had passed, the peace they fought for was fragile and worth every effort. The strength of a veteran was not just in the battles fought, but in the courage to protect and rebuild in the aftermath. As the first light of dawn broke over the small Texas town, O'Connor's Café began to stir with life once more. The remnants of last night's battle were evident: broken furniture, shattered glass, and the lingering scent of smoke, but the cafe stood resilient, a testament to the veterans' unwavering spirit. Captain Michael Mick O'Connor walked through the doorway, surveying the damage with a mixture of relief and sorrow. The night had been won, but not without cost. Mick approached the counter, where Lena O'Connor was already tending to minor injuries sustained during the confrontation. Her hands moved deftly, applying bandages to a cut on her arm. She looked up, meeting Mick's eyes with a reassuring smile. "We did it, "Mick, the town is safe now." He nodded, his gaze softening as he took in the sight of his wife working tirelessly to mend both the physical and emotional wounds. "Yes, we did. But it wasn't easy." Across the room, Hawk Henderson was being attended to by another veteran, Linda Martinez. Despite his injuries, Hawk managed a weak smile. "It's a good day. We showed them what we're made of." Linda placed a supportive hand on his shoulder. "You all did incredibly. We couldn't have done it without each other." The police had arrived shortly after the battle, securing the area and apprehending the remaining members of the Riders of Vengeance. Detective Sarah Miller approached Mick, her expression a blend of respect and curiosity. "Captain O'Connor, impressive work last night. We'll need to take statements. But your efforts didn't go unnoticed." Mick nodded, appreciating her acknowledgement. "Thank you, Detective. We're just trying to keep our community safe." As the veterans began to clean up the aftermath, the townspeople started to emerge from their homes, drawn by the sight of their protectors. Gratitude and admiration filled the air, and Mick felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The community's support had been crucial, reinforcing the bonds that held them together. Later that morning, Mick and Lena sat together on the porch, watching as neighbors began to repair the damage to their properties. The café, though scarred, stood as a beacon of resilience and unity. Mick reached out, taking Lena's hand in his. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" She nodded, leaning her head against his shoulder. "Yes, we have. And we'll keep going, no matter what." Inside the café, Mick addressed the gathered veterans and townsfolk. "Last night was a tough battle, but it showed us the strength we have when we stand together. We're not just veterans, we're a community. And together, we can face anything." Applause filled the room, the sound of unity and hope reverberating through the walls. Mick felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that their collective efforts had preserved the peace they cherished. He glanced around, seeing the determination and gratitude in everyone's eyes. As the day progressed, Mick took time to tend to his café, interacting with customers who expressed their thanks and shared their stories of resilience. Each conversation reinforced the importance of their efforts and the impact they had on the community. That evening, as the sun set in a brilliant display of colors, Mick stood outside the café, reflecting on the journey so far. The battle against the Riders of Vengeance had tested them, but it had also brought out the best in each of them. He felt a sense of peace settling over him, a stark contrast to the turmoil of the past. Lena joined him, placing a hand on his arm. "We've built something strong here, Mick. Something worth protecting." He smiled, feeling the weight of his responsibilities lighten. "And we'll continue to protect it, together." As night fell, the town returned to its tranquil state, the memory of last night fading but not forgotten. Mick knew that challenges might arise again, but with his community and fellow veterans by his side, he was confident they could overcome anything. The dawn had indeed brought a new day, filled with hope, strength, and the unbreakable bonds of unity.
In the heart of a quiet Texas town, a retired war hero seeks peace. But when an outlaw biker gang threatens his newfound serenity, past battles resurface. Can one man's courage protect his community from the shadows of his history? Drop a comment and share where you're joining us from. If stories like this resonate with you, hit subscribe so you don't miss our next inspiring journey coming tomorrow.